Gamajidu gudiram, gakabaomi potam, Khulashinawai arif, azam ze maqalatam, bijon shudam sajam, ta jane kharabatam. Jane kharabatam, چون گشت اونها پرده بروخی ازد جستم زیم کن اندر تو کیزد بربسته تمامی رخت از مدرسه کسرت این خرقه این خرقه است ایران در میکده وحدت صد بار گرم صد بار گرم کردم
All right, everyone. I hate to cut off such beautiful music so short, but the show must go on. And what better way to start off today's presentation with some music by the legendary Ustad Sarahang, for which the series, The Law of Music, Raga's Rhythms and Imaginations in Afghanistan, comes from. This is one of his famous songs, Janan Kharabat, which is the love of Kharabat, which is a street in Kabul of some significance that we will be learning a little bit more about today. Welcome once again, everyone, to this space today. On behalf of Brooklyn Raga Massive, my name is Amita Vempati. I'm the program lead for the Social Justice Series. I use she, they pronouns. I identify as a cisgender queer femme, and I was raised in a caste-privileged Hindu family in the United States. I'm very honored to have curated this series with the help of many amazing scholars, friends, activists, and artists that I know. I was very grateful to have received a master's degree in Central Eurasian Studies from Indiana University, where I was also privileged to study with many amazing scholars of Afghanistan and Afghan languages. As such, this moment for all of us continues to be slightly heavy, but also full of the promise of exploring the beauty as we begin to welcome our new Afghan friends and neighbors into our homes and into our communities. Before we begin this conversation, I would encourage us to, in once again this moment of heaviness, take a collective community breath, which will allow us to ground ourselves before we embark into this incredible musical and historical discussion. I'm going to count to 3, and once I count to 3, everyone could take a deep inhale, and I will cue the exhale. So inhale on 1, 2, 3. And exhale. I hope you're feeling a little bit grounded in that small moment for all of the beauty that is to come. I wanted to voice some intentions that we have for this community and our space at this time. We have four main ones. The first being that the intention of this series is to center Afghan art, voices, and experiences. We are aware that many people in our community might be proximate to South Asian voices and experiences that might have a lot of experience talking about Afghanistan. But in this moment, we really want to respect the experience of Afghan artists, musicians, activists, and scholars that are entering into our community space, some for the first time. Our second community intention is that this series was made to learn about Afghan musical theory, history, and culture, and the beautiful interconnections between all of them. Our third intention, and this is an important one, is to build solidarity between all South Asian diasporic groups, as well as an inclusivity of Afghan diaspora in South Asian American communities. Speaking personally as an Indian American, I feel like I must honestly introspect and reflect on the fact that the Afghan diaspora has not been included in many South Asian American events that I have gone to or South Asian spaces that I have occupied. Simultaneously, this has been twinned with a lack of advocacy by the South Asian diaspora to support our friends in Afghanistan and our Afghan neighbors as they make their way into the United States and many other parts of the world. As such, there is a strong intention in this space to understand not only about the beautiful connections that we have with each other through art and music, but also the ways that we can leverage those connections into solidarity and true support between us. And that brings us to our final community intention, which is to support Afghan advocacy needs. This includes both materially and in substantive advocacy support where requested. Toward that end, we are at Brooklyn Raga Massive honored to have partnered with two excellent organizations to host this series. The first being a wonderful advocacy group led by Afghans called Afghans for a Better Tomorrow, based in Los Angeles, as well as an Australian-based nonprofit called Sound Central Festival. Sound Central Festival were also the organizers of the first and only alternative music festival in Kabul in the 2010s. They have since pivoted to working on evacuating and supporting at-risk musicians in Afghanistan. In order to speak to the fourth community intention that we've set here today, which is to support Afghan advocacy needs, we encourage anyone who's watching this video or participating in this space to consider contributing to the effort that Sound Central Festival is hosting to save Afghan Sufis. This includes a group of whirling dervishes that reached out to Sound Central late last year and requested that they be evacuated from Mazar-e-Sharif. Have this quick video here to show you a little bit more about that effort.
Save Afghan Sufi.
Hello. As we know, all Afghanistan is under the control of Taliban nowadays. So because of their different ideological beliefs and ideas against the Sufism school, we are all under the threat of Taliban regime.
As a person that message the humanity, honesty, accessibility, and all over the world.
no any way for me except Sufism way to show myself as a human, to believe all of the community.
Please save Afghan Sufism teams and support us.
Save Afghan Sufism.
Save Afghan Sufis.
Save Afghan Sufisms.
Thank you all for making space for that project and all of that information. Once again, if you are able, we strongly encourage you to give to the GoFundMe that is linked in the description of this YouTube. With that, with no further ado, I would like to introduce this wonderful event that we have, placing Afghan music in South Asian history and Raga theory. I'm extremely honored to have met and to have learned from over the last couple of weeks that I have known him, the incredible Dr. Waheedullah Saghar. And just a little bit about him, if you'll allow me to give a brief introduction of his many accomplishments. Dr. Saghar was actually the head of the music department and an associate professor at the Faculty of Fine Arts at Kabul University before the Taliban occupied the country. Saghar was born in 1978 in Kabul, Afghanistan. He showed musical interest while studying at his alma mater, Amani High School in Kabul, and seriously started learning Hindustani classical music at the age of 15 under the guidance of Ustad Nisar Hussain, brother of renowned Afghan classical musician, the late Ustad Muhammad Hussain Sarahan. In 1998, during the Taliban's reign, his family migrated to Pakistan, where he learned classical music from Ustad Lal Khan and Ustad Ehsan Irfan. Saghar completed his BA in music from Kabul University and worked at the radio worked at BBC Radio. He later went to India on a scholarship to complete his master's degree in Hindustani vocal classical music at the Bhaktande Music University in Lucknow. In 2017, Saghar completed his PhD on the role of Afghan musicians in the propagation of North Indian classical music in Afghanistan from Indira Kala Music University in India. He has performed solo nationally and internationally, and his major performances include the Melody from the East Festival in Samarkand, Uzbekistan in 2019, performing in Stockholm in 2017, in Tampere in 2017, at the KM Music Academy and the Goethe Institute, as well as in Chennai in 2017, in Lucknow in 2012, and in Hildesheim in 2009. Dr. Saghar currently lives and works in Weimar, Germany, and is joining us at 1 a.m. his time, for which we are ever so grateful. With that, Saghar, I invite you to share any information that I might have missed about all of your wonderful accomplishments, and welcome you to start this presentation whenever you're ready. And I believe you are muted.
Yeah, thank you. First of all, hello to everyone, and I'm so grateful to you, dear Amita, with which you provide this opportunity for me, and also thanks to Mr. Neil to operate this presentation, and also I'm so thankful to all audience which they join us in this event. Everything about me, you already told about me everything, but yeah, I want to mention that during I was a student in Kabul University. So my guru, my Ustadji, my master was Ustad Salim Bakhsh Khan Sahab, and he was from Sham Chawarasi Gharana, a student of Salamat Ali Khan Sahab, and also in India, according to tradition of Guru Shisham Parampara, I learned classical music from Pandit Rameshwar Mishraji from Banaras, Gharana. So regarding my presentation, the presentation is on music of Afghanistan. As you know, Afghanistan has many variety in music, classical music, light classical like ghazals, and also folk music, even pop music. But nowadays, Afghanistan music includes by Hindustani classical music. So the question of this presentation is why so easily the Afghan people adopt and accept the Hindustani classical music, and what was the reason and which the Hindustani classical music propagate in all Afghanistan. Before that, I gave answer of these questions. So I want to start with the a little. I want to on the next slide, please. I want to give a brief information about the geographical and political background of Afghanistan. Actually, the previous name of Afghanistan was Khorasan. Khorasan was part of northeastern of Iran and Central Asian countries like Turkmenistan, Tajikistan, Uzbekistan, and a big part of Afghanistan, so which was named Khorasan. But Khorasan in 1747 changed to Afghanistan by King Ahmad Shah Abdali. Ahmad Shah Abdali, besides he was a fighter, king of Afghanistan, and he was interested to cultural activity also, but he couldn't find enough time to do something for Afghan music. But according to some historian, his son, when he became the king of Afghanistan, Timur Shah, I think he did something for culture of Afghanistan, especially for music of Afghanistan. He that time, according to some music scholar, he invited some musicians from India, but unfortunately we don't have proper and evidence on that particular moment in text form. Next slide, please. Khorasan has a particular music which we call Khorasani music. And Khorasani music was based on Muqam, which sixth Muqam was very famous in Khorasan, which in Persian we call Shash Muqam. So that time the sixth Muqam was very famous, and Muqam concept is we can say that similar to the Hindustani Raga, but there is a differences, but we can say it is similar to Raga or maybe Tat. This concept was that time in the Khorasan. We had a kind of folk music in our province Badakhshan, which is right now also they are prevalent, and the people of Badakhshan, especially folk musicians of Badakhshan, they know about that kind of Khurasani music they're performing. But in Herat and Kunduz also we have some musicians. But in south side of Afghanistan, especially in the border of Pakistan, which there is living Pashtun people, there is the melody of their melody is a little similar to Hindustani and especially Punjabi and Sindhi melody. Yeah, so please next slide. Now I want to, in this part, I want to talk about the entry of Hindustani musicians to Afghanistan. These musicians came to Afghanistan in 1860. Actually, these musicians came to Afghanistan by the invitation of Amir Sher Ali Khan. Amir Sher Ali Khan, king of Afghanistan, he was very interested in music. Actually, he was a musician. He was a good rebab player. And according to some scholars, he had a tour to British India, and during the tour, the host, the Maharaja, which that time was the Maharaja in India, and of course, the Maharaja asked to the Amir Sher Ali Khan, what was very interesting for you in this tour, and what did you like in this tour from India? So the Amir Sher Ali Khan said that I much like the musicians which they perform for us. So the Maharaja of India, of course, they were Maharaja, and they, you know, that all team, the musicians group, he like a gift to present the Amir Sher Ali Khan, and Amir Sher Ali Khan, these musicians returned, came to Afghanistan with Amir Sher Ali Khan, which around 15 and 16 musicians. They came to Afghanistan with their family, and they migrated in Afghanistan forever. And these musicians settled in the Koche Kharabat. Koche Kharabat is a very famous place in the musical history of Afghanistan, and the Afghani musicians believe that Koche Kharabat is the tradition university and tradition academy of music in Afghanistan. So these musicians from Koche Kharabat to the court of Amir Sher Ali Khan, they was going for performing every week. And beside this musicians in the court of Amir Sher Ali Khan, the Khurasani musicians also was performing there. But there is no clear reason. Time to time, we lost the Khurasani music in Afghanistan, and this music replaced by the Hindustani music and musicians. Which in the starting, I mentioned the question, which how and why, easily the Afghan people accept and adopt the Hindustani classical music and melody in Afghanistan. So, according my research and which I discussed with musicians in Afghanistan in the past, so because Afghanistan or especially India in the ancient time, there was no boundary, and it was total same land, same country. So we have a lot of cultural similarity, and so especially in the time of Ashoka, which in the Bamiyan sculpture, and it means the Afghan people, before the entry of Hindustani musicians in Afghanistan, they were very similar to the Hindustani melodies because before the entry of Hindustani music and Hindustani musicians, our people was the Bhairavi Raga, for example. Bhairavi Raga was very prevalent in Afghanistan. We have a lot of folk songs which is composed in Bhairavi. So I think it is the point that very easily the Afghan people adopt and accept, and Hindustani classical music propagate in all Afghanistan. So we totally lost the color and music of Khorasani in Afghanistan. Just in the Badakhshan of Afghanistan, which is in the border of Tajikistan, and also Herat, which is in the border of Iran, we have some folk musicians which we call falak. Falak is a kind of Khorasani music. They performing and they singing in some private parties and also official parties. Yeah. So now next slide, please. I want to talk about the important role. I think the slide we missed one slide. I think. Can you, Mr. Neil, back? Yeah. Thanks so much. Now I want to talk about the important role of Kharabat musicians in the propagation of Hindustani classical music in Afghanistan. Actually, the process of propagation of Hindustani classical music in Afghanistan was through their performing in the court of Amir Sher Khan, and also the Kharabat musicians, time to time, they performing the classical music among royal families, and also they encourage the royal families members to come Kharabat, and they learn classical music. And so by this process, and the Hindustani classical music propagates time to time in all Afghanistan, and the Kharabat musicians' role in the development of Afghani music. So in this way, a lot of Kharabat musicians play a very important role. But I want to particular name which is Ustad Qasim Afghan. And the next slide. Ustad Qasim Afghan, he played very significant role in the development of Afghani music. Actually, the Afghan musicians believe that he is the founder of semi-classical ghazal singing in Afghanistan, which is a totally different style from Hindustani and Pakistani ghazal singing. So he is the founder of this school, of this style of singing in Afghanistan. And also, for example, I want to give you an example which he recomposed some folk song of Afghanistan. It means he learned the folk songs from Khorasani musicians, and he recomposed it because he had knowledge in classical music. So I give you an example. We have a folk song which is very famous, and it is very necessary to perform in every wedding party. The lyrics of song is Aistabro, Aistabro, means walk slowly, slowly, and enter slowly, slowly. So the song is to encourage the bride and groom to enter the hall of wedding hall, and they have to walk slowly, slowly. but the original composition doesn't match to the meaning of lyrics. It means the original composition rhythm was very fast and melody was very fast, but the meaning of lyrics was very, smooth and slow. So, for example, I want to just very softly want to sing for you like this. جانانگکم قدت و گل میمانه استابرو ما ایمان استابرو از آمدنت کاش که خبر میداشتم استابرو ما ایمان استابرو like this. But Ustad Qasim, the same lyrics put a new composition, which the raga of composition is Pilo and rhythm is tal is Mughali. And I will sing for you. Jana nagake qadet bagul me mana sabira sarveravana sabira asa madane کاش که خبر می داشتم استابرو سروی روان استابرو. Yeah, so it is the version which composed by Ustad Qasim, and from that time it means more than 100 years till now, the Afghan people, even Pashtun, Tajik, Hazara, everybody use this song, this version song in wedding parties, and it is very necessary to in the last of party, musicians perform this song, and bride and groom through of this song enter the hall, wedding hall, and they take place in the stage of hall. Yeah. Next slide, please. Yeah, now I want to talk about the it's also main point in this presentation, comparing Afghan classical music and Hindustani classical music. What's the difference between both? Actually, generally and basically, there is no difference between Afghani classical music and Hindustani classical music. But some small difference which I find it in regarding theoretical and melody rhythm. So I will share with you. Regarding theory, we in Hindustani classical music, we have a saptak, and saptak has 7 notes, and we have the concept of komal, it means flat notes, and tevar, which is sharp note, and also shutsar, which natural note. But in Afghan classical music, which everything is same, but there is no the concept of shutsar. It means we don't have any shutsar. It means the shutsar name is also in Afghani classical music tevar note. So it is a difference in theory. For example, in Hindustani we say that sa, re komal, and re shut, ga komal, ga shut, ma shut, and ma tivar. We have only one ma, which is tivar, which is ma. Pa is independent, and da komal, da shut, ni komal, ni shut. But in Afghani classical music, the musicians' concept is which sa and re komal, re tivar, ga komal, ga tivar, ma komal, and ma tivar. Pa is independent, and da komal, da tivar, ni komal, ni tivar. And also in the notation, when they want to put the name of tivar and komal, so they will, if they put the name komal re, so they will write only re, and the tiwa re will be there as ra. So it means sa, re, ra, ga, ga, ma, ma, pa, da, da, ni, na, like this. I'm sorry. So it is difference regarding theory, and regarding melody and raga. So of course there is no difference. We have same called Bhairavi in Afghanistan, same Bhairavi is in India. That notation, the notes, everything is same. Wadi, Samadhi is same, and Yaman also Darbari, Purya Kalyan, Gujri Tudi, every rag is same in Afghanistan. But in practical way, some raga which is very, from ancient time in Afghanistan was prevalent, like Bhairavi. In the theory, we couldn't find a small difference between Afghanistan Bhairavi and Hindustani Bhairavi, but in performing way, if you listening, so you will find a difference. It means you will feel this Bhairavi performing by an Afghan musician, and this Bhairavi is performing by an Indian musician. So I have an example for all of you, which is this composition is this folk song is very ancient, and it is this composition. It means that folk, and it is before of the entry of Hindustani musician in Afghanistan. This was famous among Afghan people. So you can play, please, Amita.
زمستانش بهار باشد به ما چی شبم در گریه و روزین بزاری کارگر جان انتظار باشه بپاس الهی باد بارانی بگیر
Yeah, and also regarding compositions in classical composition, Khyal Gaiki. So there is, regarding composition and Khyal Gaiki, there is no different because in Afghanistan, our classical musicians they performing same compositions, and especially in Khyal Gaiki, but Afghan musicians they compose some bandishes which is in Pashto language. We in India we have a lot of compositions in Khyal Gaiki which is in Sanskrit, Hindi, Urdu, and even Persian. But in India, there is no composition which will be in Pashto. But in Afghanistan, because and Pashto people are living in Afghanistan, so mostly Afghan classical singers, especially Ustad Musa Qasimi, which he is the relative of Ustad Fatima Khan, he performing Pashto Bandish. Me, the lyrics is Pashto in Raga Chandarkau. So I request to Amitabh, please play for us. Yeah, thank you. Please, next slide. Yeah, now I want to talk about the difference in rhythm and tal between Afghan classical or maybe semi-classical music and Hindustani classical music. So basically, there is also no difference. We have the same the same tala in Afghanistan, like ek tal, teen tal, and rupak, jab tal, every tal which is prevalent in Hindustani classical music. So Afghani classical music also they use these tals. But in semi-classical, we have some special tal which is particular for Afghan musicians they use, and in Hindustani musicians, especially tabla players, I discussed with them. They say that it's particular for Afghan musicians, and we didn't use these tals. So one of them is Mughali. Mughali is 7 beat. 7 beat means same to we have in Hindustani rupak. And rupak bowl is different, and the composition of rhythm is different, which we say that tin tin din din tin tin din din, and the counting way is like 1 2 3 1 2 1 2 1 2 3 1 2 1 2 1. But Mughali of Afghanistan is a little different. It is tin ta din din da da, tin ta din din da da. Same to rupak. First beat is khali, but in 4 is tali, like 1 2 3 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 1 2 3 4 tin ta din din da da, tin ta din din da da, like this. So I play this that which I talk about the Astabro song, which is recomposed by Ustad Musa Qasimi. So that version, that composition was in Mughali rhythm. Yeah. And the next tala is Tapia, which is a semi-classical rhythm and classical in Afghanistan. And this rhythm is 8-beat, same to Kerwa, which we have in Hindustani music. But of course, it is the composition of rhythm is totally different. It is like titta din din titta din din. It's a little difficult. I want to try to because of the same different mood. Din din ta din din ta din din ta din din ta din din, like 1 2 3 1 2 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 1 2 3, like this. So I have an example for you if possible, so please play that.
اگر خورشید گردونم وگر گرد سرگان اگر خورشید گردونم وگر گرد سرگان گدایی حضرت شاه 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 گدایی کردم پیشه خود که آیم گاهی بردرد من گدایی حضرت شاه گدایی حضرت شاه گدایی حضرت شاه گدایی حضرت شاه.
Yeah, thank you.
And on the Tihar.
Yeah, thank you for your attention. The presentation is complete, and now if you have any questions, so yeah, I'm here.
Wonderful. Again, a big thank you to you, Saghar, for this amazingly informative presentation. It is such a gift to be able to hear, you know, how there are like no borders really between music in this way. And I actually just want to take one quick second before I finish that thought. I would like to invite anyone who has any questions for Dr. Saghar, please feel free to drop them in the YouTube comments, and we will field them as they come in. While we wait for your questions, and Saghar, I have a few as well, but I will WhatsApp you if everyone else has questions. Otherwise, I did just want to note very quickly that I think your presentation really again spoke to this idea that once again we have all these connections between us. And last year in April, our very first social justice series actually focused on the Wayafs and their contributions to Hindustani music. And I think that it's kind of interesting that, you know, with the discussion of the Wayafs, we talked a lot about Central Asian contributions to Indian music, not just Hindustani music, but Carnatic music as well. And then the contributions of these women, of the Wayafs, back to Hindustani music, as it was taught to various princes, as well as to courtiers and other musicians, before it seems like it went back to Central Asia. So I really think that what we're talking about here isn't so much that India influenced Afghanistan and that's the end of it. I think that it's an ongoing exchange back and forth.
Yeah.
And that really is such a beautiful part of what binds all of us together in this shared Raga tradition. Yeah. Please go ahead.
Yeah, of course, you know, during the Babur Empire, we have Babur carried, with him to India, the Herat civilization, which was in Herat. So there was some Khurasani musicians, and he transferred these musicians to India on that time, which according to some experience, the Hindustani classical music is the combination of Carnatic and Khurasani music.
Mm-hmm.
You know, especially when we talk about the Hindustani classical music, for example, the instrument tabla. Tabla is the name of tabla taken from tabl. Tabl is Persian and Arabic words, you know. And also, for example, khiyal. The word of khiyal is Arabic and Persian, you know. Mm-hmm. So it shows us that there was, as you said, the impact of Central Asia, especially Afghanistan music on Hindustani classical music. So because when Babur carried these musicians with him to India, and these musicians together perform in front of Babur, and these musicians each to learn from each other, you know, and they burn new music, which is we call Hindustani classical music. Mm-hmm. So that's why, yeah, because melody is so similar, you know, and same. And the words, for example, especially in Kathak dance, we have a lot of Persian words which we use. Amar, Chakardar, everything, all is Persian. So yeah, of course, I agree with this. But it was before, and King of Ahmad Shah Durrani, it was before Khurasan. It is but once again, during the Ahmad Shah and till Amir Sher Khan, the Hindustani musicians come to Afghanistan and carry with him that music which was going from Afghanistan, and again they return to Afghanistan. Yeah,
it's the circle of life. Everything comes back around.
Like that. Yeah.
Of course, and I think that one thing that I would like to ask you about now, because I think the area of your research is focused on a time before these borders were really solidified, before India became India and Pakistan became Pakistan and modern Afghanistan became what it is today. I'm actually kind of curious about all of the modern influences on Afghan Klasiki as well. So I think today, especially, I'm thinking about the contributions, for example, to Afghan music through Bollywood. I know since Lata Mangeshkar passed yesterday or the day before.
Yeah.
I can't remember exactly when. I'm thinking about how a lot of my friends in Afghanistan actually texted me to say, like, I'm so sorry she passed away.
Yeah.
And it's kind of interesting because for me, when I think of, Lata Mangeshkar, I of course know that she had this huge international reach. But that reminds me also, she was a Hindustani trained musician. Her grandmother was a Tawaif, which is interesting, or a Devadasi. And so I think this raises a question for me. Do you find that there's influences from modern performances of Hindustani music that are continuing to influence the way that Klasiki evolves in Afghanistan?
Yeah, of course. I think till the entry of Mujahideen in Afghanistan. Before that, in the government of Dr. Najibullah, and before that. So a lot of people in Afghanistan was very much close with Hindustani classical music, even in classical folk songs and ghazal and filmi songs, which we call filmi songs. In every restaurant of Kabul, in the morning, they played the Lata Mangeshkar ji, Muhammad Rafi, and Kishore ji songs in Kabul. So it means every morning, if you pass the old streets of Kabul, so you was of course listening to the songs of Lata Mangeshkar ji and Muhammad Rafi. Yeah, but especially in this 20 years ago, which by the entry of US forces in Afghanistan after the Taliban government, Afghanistan become like a different, and because the youngster which they was outside of Afghanistan, somebody was in Iran, somebody in Central Asian countries like Tajikistan, somebody was in European countries. So they bring different culture of music in Afghanistan, because for example, rock, pop, and especially Western style of music entered in Afghanistan. So that much interest which we had in the past, especially our youngster to classical Hindustani classical music, we a little that our youngster was not that much interested, which in the past our people was interested, because this civil war in Afghanistan that break that that which we had a connection with India, So yeah, of course. But in the past, even common people in the province of Afghanistan, they was much interested with Raga of Hindustani Ragas. They every time request to the musicians, please sing for us this rag, please perform for us this rag, and which was very for common people, it's very difficult to understand the Raga name, and they suggest to the musicians to please perform for us this rag, because in Afghanistan common people doesn't have much knowledge about classical music. But on that time, our people, because of lot interest to Hindustani classical music, they had knowledge. They that time they understood the melody of Hindustani classical music, the raga, the composition, everything.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing all of that. It is interesting how music takes root in different times and in different energies, I think, that are going on around us. I definitely am lucky that I've also been able to meet some young Hindustani composers who are still in Afghanistan. They're like in their early 20s, and they are very passionate about learning and developing these rags into forms that suit them. So I think there's all of these inspirations still coming from all of these different directions. toward that, we do have a few questions from the audience. The first one is from Deva Amatya. Curious to know if classical vocalists in Afghanistan perform Hindi or Urdu bandishes or primarily Dari or Pashto.
Actually, mostly bandishes is in Afghanistan, which performed by Afghan vocalists, was in Hindi and Urdu. But there are some maybe five, six bandishes which is in Persian and Pashto in Afghanistan. Otherwise, all bandishes in Sanskrit, Hindi, and Urdu. Yeah, that's why because the audience, they never understand the meaning of a bandesh, but they was interested to listen the music, the way of performing the vocalist. They was not important to what's the meaning of lyrics. They like it to listen the melody and the raga and the way which the singer perform. So we have some bandishes in Afghanistan which composed by Amir Khosraw Dehlavi Balkhi, which we call Balkhi, and in Hindustan he is famous as a Dehlavi because his father was from Afghanistan. That's why, yeah. So like the famous bandish, which is I think sang by Ustad Amir Khan Sahab, also Yareman Bia Bia Yareman Bia Bia. It's in Darbari and Ektal. It's very famous bandish which is composed by Amir Khosraw Sahab. And same to some other bandishes also in Persian, but mostly bandishes is in Urdu and Hindi.
Thank you. Yes, I think I've definitely, when I hear some of the older performers, I've definitely heard like blends. Sometimes also like when a song is like a bandish that has like a religious meaning also. I don't know if you've seen this. I've heard like a bandish be like a Krishna bandish in like India, but then I've heard a recording by Sada Hung that is just completely secular, no religious meaning.
Yeah, of course. Yeah,
as well. It's the bandish. It's in Bhairavi called the antara is Matja. Matja, Matja, Matja. Jogi. I can't sing though. I don't know why I'm singing.
Yeah.
But it's funny because it's a bandish to Krishna when I hear Indian singers sing it, and then when Sada Hung sings it, it's actually to a lover saying like, don't go. So I always find that very interesting, like how those change, but the language can be fluid.
Yeah, of course, I want to mention that on this statement that in Afghanistan, especially in national TV studio recording and our national radio, as I saw an interview of Ustad Bari Ghulam Ali Khan Sahab, which he performed a bandish in Lahore after the separation of Hindustan and Pakistan. So the radio manager called him that Ustadji, you can't sing this bandish because it is related to Hindu religion, and now this is Islamic country. You have to sing some Islamic bandish in Pakistan. But in Afghanistan, there was no such a thing. It's completely like a secular concept. Mostly bandishes which performed by Ustad Muhammad Hussain Saran Sahab in Afghanistan. We have a lot of recording, which is it is the name of Ram, Krishna, so the people doesn't, show some reaction, which was why it is related to Hinduism, why he sang in Afghanistan. So never. So the Afghan people and Afghan musicians, they accept it, and with the deep of love, they performing this bandish.
Sure. Thank you so much for sharing that. It's such an interesting political situation as well that reflects in the circle of influences as well. Our next question starts off with some good wishes from Michael Lindsay. He says, Salam alaikum, Dr. Saab. So good to see you again. I am so glad that you are well and safe. As are we. We're all glad that you are well and safe.
Thank you.
Michael Lindsay's question is, in your research among musicians in Harabat, did you encounter any traces of Drupad music or compositions, or just Khyal and Ghazal?
Okay. Actually, when I discussed with Harabat musicians regarding of compositions in among the Harabat musicians, so they said the entry of Hindustani musician in Afghanistan, they performing in the court of Amir Sher Khan, Durbat Gaiki, Durbat singing. That time was not Khyal singing. For the first time, Khyal singing was performed by Ustad Sarahang in the court of Muhammad Zahir Shah, King Muhammad Zahir Shah. So there is a story which one day Ustad Ghulam Hussain Khan went to the court of King Zahir Shah, and he performed with Ustad Qasim also. So King Zahir Shah asked to Ustad Ghulam Hussain, who is this young boy? So Ustad Ghulam Hussain said that he is my son, and he was in Lahore. He was learning classical music from Ustad Ashaq Ali Khan in Patiala Gharana. So now he returned to Afghanistan. So so King Zahir Shah asked him, can he sing something for us? So Ustad Sarang, which that time was very young, and he take the Tampura, and he, I think, performed Khyal in Gujri Tudi Raga. So Zahir Shah said, from this time, you, Ustad Ghulam Hussain Khan, you are retired, and I will send your salary at your home. Yeah. So from this time, Ustad Sarahang is my special singer, and he will perform for us. Yeah. So it was the starting of, can I say, the career of Ustad Muhammad Hussain Sarahang in the court of Muhammad Zahir Shah, King of Zahir Shah, which from that time he starting to performing Khyal Gaiki in the court of Zahir Shah. And before that was just only Durbat Gaiki, not Khyal Gaiki. Yeah.
Interesting. So because we talked about like Ustad Qasim Afghan, like bringing sort of these flavors of Hindustani and Afghan folk music together. So I guess, was he more bringing those like Drupad styles in the composition? Because that is an interesting development if in this period of blending these two styles, you had this Drupad influence, but then Sarahang's Khyal, I think, for me personally, I don't know very much, but like for me, I'm more familiar with his work because it's recorded and you can access more of it. So that is really interesting. I didn't realize that Durbat music was the main one.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
Wonderful. No, this is great. I don't believe we have any more questions that are coming up in the chat. But I think something that is coming up for me, again, I have a lot of questions generally, so I'm always glad. For those of you who are tuning in, I've been very lucky to speak with Saghar multiple times on the phone, and he already knows once I get excited about something, I ask him questions and we talk for like an hour. So we don't have to talk for an hour more, but I think that the spirit of this series was once again intended to show that, you know, the borders that we've created in our head sometimes are like the borders that we understand exist now. So for example, I think that for many people who've learned, for example, Hindustani music in India, Hindustani music is a product of India, right? Instead of it being this shared product of Pakistan, India, and Afghanistan. But I'm noticing that when we talk and when we've been talking in this presentation, we make a lot of distinctions when we say Hindustani and Afghan, right? And we keep saying Hindustani is influencing Afghan music. So I guess my question is, when you think about klasiki in like the way that it is an Afghan tradition, would you say that raga itself is Indian or Afghan?
Okay, it is difficult.
No right answer. It's, I guess, maybe it's just more of a in your head, and I think also in the head of many Afghan musicians, would they consider raga being an Indian import, or would they consider it to be part of Afghan music?
Yeah, actually, it's my belief that raga. When we talk about the Hindustani classical music, so the Carnatic music is very ancient, very the historically from long time before to Hindustani classical music, and raga concept is also in Carnatic music.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, so I believe that with the the mixing of Khorasani music with Carnatic music, the Hindustani classical music become the result of combination of both music become Hindustani classical music, and so the raga concept was before that, because so I can't say that the raga concept was in Afghanistan before the entry of Hindustani musician in Afghanistan. Yeah, but which as I said, in the history from ancient time in Haryana, and also which the Afghanistan and India, on that in the ancient time was same land and same country. So from that time, the how to say because was same culture, musical culture, and so that time maybe the Afghan people was similar with the name of raga, but we can say that no, it is the origin is from India, and from India the concept of raga came to Afghanistan.
Thank you. That's an interesting. I know. I'm sorry. That was a complicated question, but with a lot.
Yeah, it was a little complicated, but it's my belief. Yeah.
No. Good. Thank you for sharing your beliefs with us.
Yeah.
Because I also, one of the things that we've been trying to do at Brooklyn Raga Massive is sort of understand who feels like they own these classical music traditions, right? Like who basically feels like they have the right to perform, the right to be paid to perform, who created this music. And that's why we were talking about the Waheedullah last year, because the Waheedullah, created a lot of the Hindustani music and then recorded a lot of it, and then were erased from being able to perform it. So similarly, I think it's really interesting that you have this, this sort of, I'm going to say cultural infrastructure or cultural structure where, the raga as we know it may have existed outside of Khorasan in these folk traditions. And then Afghanistan, now as we understand it, modern Afghanistan is both the product of these Khorasani influences and these Pashto influences. So like, I'm going to maybe I'm not disagreeing with you, but from my perspective, it looks like the raga is also very much a part of this musical fabric that makes up Afghanistan, right? It feels like it's always been there to an extent, right? And even in India, we have all of these folk ragas that define certain regions, but only became absorbed into Hindustani music afterward, for example. So
yeah, actually mostly musicians that they say that this raga composed by this particular musician, this raga composed by this, but some musicians believe that the raga is not composed, the raga is discovered. We can say that this particular raga discovered by this ustad and this pandit and this music scholar. So it means the raga already exists in the environment, and but we just become able to discover it. We're not able to compose it. For example, we say that Bilas Khani Turi is composed by Bilas Khan, son of Sunshine.
Mhm.
Yeah, but some musicians say no. This raga is discovered by Bilas Khan. The raga is already existing in the area. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. It's not composed. It already, as a combination of notes, it already exists, and someone
Yeah.
brings it and gives it a name.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
Maybe then one more selfish question. I know it's so late. I'll let you go soon. But are there any Afghan rags that are like, I guess, that are discovered by Afghans, or are, we talked a lot about Bhairavi, which I think is common. The Bhairavi mode is very common in many cultures. So I like that it's in Afghan music, but I guess after, Hindustani music was brought to Hyderabad, and you have all these musicians developing Afghan music that's a combination of Afghan folk and Hindustani. Do you have any ragas that were discovered and are sort of unique to Afghan
Yeah,
singing?
actually, yeah, it's a good question. We have a musician which he says that he discovered, composed a raga, which is, according him, this ragas belong to Beirut art, and his name is Ustad Majid Sipan. He is a good sitar player in Afghanistan. During my research, I met him and I asked him a same question, and he said, "Yes, I have a raga which I want to someday to go to India, and I will perform in front of some masters and musicians. I will explain my raga to him." But also Ustad Muhammad Hussain Sarang Sahab, he composed it and maybe discovered a raga which he is named it Hazra Rag. Hazra Rag. Hazra. It is Hazara. Hazara means that ethnic group of Afghanistan. Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
So,
wonderful.
Yeah. He actually he listening to the particular melody of Hazara melodies, which is very unique melody, and they are folk songs. And then he convert that melody in raga moods, which he called Hazara Rag, and it is just only 3 notes. Yeah.
What? Sorry.
Yeah. It is just only 3 notes in the subtext. It's 3 note raga.
Mhm.
So, but unfortunately, I now because it was I don't remember it. I forget it, the exact notes, but it was he composed a raga which name is Hazara, and he performing. And I think in YouTube you can find it. Search it. This raga is available in the YouTube also, which is composed by Ustad Sarang. Yeah.
Wow, honestly, that makes me really, I mean, I get really excited and happy by a lot of the things you tell me, but like, I love that there is like specifically something for the Hazara people, because for those of you who are tuning in who might not know about the ethnic makeup of Afghanistan, it's a very, very diverse place. The predominant ethnic groups being Pashto and Tajik people. There's also many, many more, Uzbeks, Baloch, Iranians, Turkmen, it goes on and on and on. But there's also an ethnic group called Hazaras who are connected to old Turkic and Mongolic groups that came down into what is now Afghanistan. And while they speak Hazaragi, which is very similar to Dari, they are sort of, I think the thing that's they're most well known for to the outside world is that they are not treated very well by Pashto people. They experience a lot of discrimination in Afghanistan. And it's kind of interesting because actually their music is also very Turkic influence. They play the dombra, which is a 2-string lute. So I think that's wonderful that he made a rag out of it, because the music that I've heard of Hazara instruments and songs, it's always a chord between 2 strings. So it's not a melody like you play like on the sitar or on like the rubab. It's always the 2 strings going together. Sorry,
actually,
I'm just so excited.
when I saw the interview of Ustad Sarang, which he talked about this raga, which he composed it and he discovered it. So regarding the Hindustani classical music theory, the concept is that any raga is not possible to less than 5 notes. It should be at least 5 notes, then it will be accepted as a raga. But 2-3 weeks ago, I just listened to a composition which performed by Pandit Rajan or Sajanji, which was in 3 notes. So I just I remember that same Ustad Muhammad Sarang also he composed a raga which was in 3 notes, which is very similar to the Azaragi melody. And and during his interview, he said that this is this concept I bring and I listening to the Hazaragi music, and then I composed this raga which is in 3 notes, and he also performed for audience in 3 notes, which is very difficult for a performer to sing a bandish or maybe alav in 3 notes, because it is very difficult. So there's a concept.
Wow, that's fantastic. And that's I feel like for rhythms, I've heard, there's like a Pashtu rhythm, like a Pashtu tal, for example, in like Hindustani music, but I've never heard of a Hazara influenced rag or tal before, which I think is just wonderful. And maybe that brings me, I'm sorry, I need to stop asking you questions, but one more question, because this is
of course.
Thank you. You're so kind. This is a social justice series. And one of the things that as I mentioned before, we've been talking a lot about is who owns this music, who is allowed to perform this music. And last Friday, we spoke with a young Elham Karimi. She is a BBC journalist. She was a BBC journalist who studied classical guitar. Oh, she studied classical guitar at Kabul University. She
She was a very student.
Wonderful. She was excited to hear you were giving this talk. So I think one of the things we spoke a lot about was whether women were allowed to participate in the creation of music in Afghanistan and what the relationship is. And I think similar to that, I'm now curious, like what, basically like of the ethnic groups, because there are so many, like, are there certain groups that perform Klasiki more than others, that are allowed to perform Klasiki? What is sort of like who is allowed to perform this music? I think that's what I'm trying to ask.
Okay, it means you want to know the role of women in the Hindustani classical music in Afghanistan?
Sure, yeah.
Actually, Ustad Qasim Afghan, Ustad Muhammad Hussain Sarahang, they had a lot of female students, which they properly learn Hindustani classical music from them. And we have for example, Ustad Mahwash, did you know her?
Yeah, of course.
Ustad Mahwash, she professionally learned classical music from Ustad Muhammad Hussain Sarahang and also from Ustad Hashim Chishti. Ustad Hashim was a very, famous tabla player of Afghanistan. And also some our pop musicians like Miss Hangama and Miss Farishta. These all female musicians. They learn classical music from grandmasters of Afghani or maybe Hindustani classical musicians. But you know that the culture, Afghani culture, a little, was limited for female musicians, especially. So they can't, as much they want to learn music, especially, and to perform. But in the 60s and 70s in Afghanistan, that time was the lot of opportunity for female. But right now, especially, no opportunity for female. But yeah, it's 20 years ago, also by the entry of USA forces in Afghanistan, there was a lot of opportunity for female, especially in Anim. A lot of female, they learn classical music from Hindustani musicians, Hindustani teachers. And in the music department also, we had a lot of students which they learn Hindustani classical music and instrumental music and vocal music also. Yeah, they had significant role, but not that much.
Yeah, it's interesting because people like Hangama, Mahwash, Fereshte, they all performed mostly like pop and folk, but they didn't, as far as I know, like I haven't seen, but again, I'm not very educated, but I haven't seen personally them perform like the heavy Hindustani music. I think they mostly, became popular for doing like very light, semi-classical or poppy songs, but it's not, I've never seen, I love Hangama, but I've never seen a video of her performing Khial. Like, yeah.
Yeah, of course. Because classical music is very difficult. It wants a lot of time to learn properly, and you have to properly riyaz, practice. Then you will be able to perform classical music. But these musicians, especially female musicians, they they learn the basic knowledge of classical music. They just understand about the notes, the raga and the rhythm. But I think just only Ustad Mahwash, I think, yeah, just one of she recorded in National Radio of Afghanistan. Yeah, and it's like duet with Ustad Mohammad Hussain Sarahang, I think, yeah. Because a bandish which Ustad Mohammad Sarang teach her, and she then performed with Ustad Sarang in the radio of Afghanistan. And other female, it is because the classical music is a little difficult and for especially for pop singers. We have a lot of pop singers, good singers now in the youngster like Ariana Saeed and some other singers, but for them, classical music is very difficult to they perform and they sing, because classical music, it needs to dedication, need to time. You have to give them time, long time, and you have to practice. You have to properly learn from your guru and ustad. So yeah, that's why the female singers never they perform real, and especially. And even semi-classical, Tumri and Dadra, they never perform.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm not a professional musician by any means. So like I didn't practice enough. So I'm the proof. I'm the misal, the example of that. I think it's also funny because I'm thinking about musicians like Homari, who I think, and like Nahma and people like that who I think were not trained specifically. Like I know that when I think of them, I think, of learning under like Beltoon or like performing with like all of these like esteemed artists who I think weren't, as far as I understand, they weren't classically trained in this Hindustani tradition, but like their music was sort of like a very heavy folk style that's like very technically challenging as well. So you have, I think Homari for me is really special because she like and people like Zarsanga, like all of them who like watched these singers perform and then started singing themselves. So, you know, they didn't go through this, like, as you say, like the Guru Sishya Parampara is like a very, it's very important in India. But for me, it's also like the way that teachers can sometimes limit others from performing. Because, you know, the Guru has to choose, like, and the Guru like allows you to perform. And so in these circumstances, you have these women just watching and learning and then becoming their own musicians as well, which I find really interesting.
Yeah, of course. We have a lot of female musicians which they learn through just they watching TV and they listening the audio of musicians, and then they try to sing with that songs, and finally they become musicians. Like as you said, Khomari, Naghma, they don't have a particular ustad and teachers, but when they was going to for recording in the national radio, so there was some masters and ustad which they advised them, some basic things, teach them, but they doesn't take professionally trained by some ustad or guru.
Yeah, I think that's also interesting because you have the same situation with the wives. As radio became big in India, you had the wives who were going to record, but people would say, you know, only sing this or only sing that. In the case of like people like Homari, like I still remember the first video I saw of hers was from like a house party with Beltun, where she was dancing, she was doing like Afshari and like also singing. And it was this really like strange moment for me because, you know, it was almost like the wives, you know, and like it was almost like she wouldn't maybe be given a stage to perform, you know, with those same people, but she was like doing the same thing and more. She was also dancing a lot. So I find that really interesting that they were still advising her on what to sing.
Yeah, of course, during dancing and singing is very difficult because, you know, the breathing, everything will be disturbing. Because I saw a lot of Kathak dancer which they performing, and between performing which they say about the bowl of tabla and the Kathak dance, you will be feel which they traveling with the breathing, you know, everything because of lot of pressure. But Khomari was very comfortable and singing and dancing the same time. Yeah, because because from starting, because from starting she practiced on the same dancing and singing, so she had to, you know, experience in both in the same time.
Yeah, it's so fascinating how, you know, these very, very talented performers, you know, sometimes they don't become the teachers, even though they're very talented, you know, and how they learn is just by absorbing. So there's certainly so much more that we can unpack now, but I know it's after quite late for you once again, Saghar. You've been so kind to answer our questions. And I just have two more for you that are actually just for you. We have some people who are tuned in who want to keep following your work. And I think Deba is asking, what is the best way to follow Dr. Saghar's research? Is there a course that we could audit, or are you continuing to lecture?
Sorry, I didn't get it. It means?
No worries. So we're asking, are you teaching any courses that we could take? Or are you lecturing in places, and can we see those lectures?
Okay, I actually, as you said, right now I'm living in Weimar, Germany, but I want to, you know, starting some online teaching courses because a lot of, especially Afghan musicians, which they want to learn and basic and professionally classical music. So they time to time request me, please start a online teaching course, and maybe through Zoom, YouTube, any way which you are comfortable, we will join it. So yeah, I will start it and then I will share with your audience.
No pressure.
Okay.
We're enjoying this so much. We want you to create a big, we want you to create a school for us. We will learn. We are your shagird.
Thank you so much.
I think, related, do you have a website? And is your dissertation available anywhere for us to access?
My dissertation, actually, I wanted that publish my dissertation, but I have to, the permission of university. So yeah, because that time was when I complete my PhD, so that the time was very short, and then I had to return Kabul back and join my job, because that time I couldn't to take the permission from university for publishing my thesis, because 2-3 publishers talked with me and they want to publish my thesis. But I couldn't find enough time to talk with the university, but I have to physically go to India and take the permission from university. So yeah, but if somebody want to for now just follow me, so I just available on Facebook and Twitter. Yeah.
Wonderful. Well, I mean, this is a good place. This will live on YouTube, actually, so we will be happy to keep this up, and you can feel free, obviously, to share it further. And one more small question. I think this is a very special conversation we had tonight. And I'm wondering, or one of our listeners is wondering, are there any published articles, books, or websites in English that talk about what we talked about tonight, or talked about what you spoke about? So the interactions between India and Afghanistan in the development of Klasiki.
Yeah, actually, yeah, I have an article which published in a German journal. In 2016. So I will share it with you, but right now it's not available with me, so I will share with you. So then you can, if anybody wants to, you can share with them. There's an article which I just write the article. The title is "The Similarity Between Hindustani and Afghani Classical Music."
Wonderful. No, thank you for sharing that. And I think we will add that as a description to your event, so everyone can find that in the future. I might also, this isn't exactly similar to what you spoke about, Saghar, but just for anyone who's interested, the work of people like Dr. Catherine Schofield is very helpful. She actually talks a lot about Hindustani music as it evolved in the Mughal era. So I personally think, for people who are kind of interested in this shared history between Central Asia and South Asia, I think she is a wonderful asset. I also, for people who are interested in Central Asian and South Asian history, Scott Levi at the Ohio State University, is a fantastic scholar of basically like shared history, and also I think specifically trade networks between Central Asia and South Asia. Interestingly, I believe that Central Asia used to be where South Asia got all of the horses from, because horses were not biologically able to live in the humid jungle that is South Asia. So they all came from Central Asia. And I believe that's where Afghanistan gets its name, from Asp to Afghanistan. I saw maybe somewhere that was the origin of the name Afghan.
Afghan, yeah. Because no, it is a long, the discussion. Yeah, because uh, Afghan is the name of particular group which living in Afghanistan, the Pashtun. But right now, we believe that all people which are living in Afghanistan, they all Afghan. So yeah, it's on this topic there is a discussion in BBC, which is if you are interested, you can find it, which is very useful discussion on this word of Afghan, the root of Afghan, the name of Afghan.
Thank you for that. And actually, two more people I'd like to shout out very quickly from my world. I would like to shout out my good friend, Dr. Amanda Lanzillo, who was one of my good friends in grad school. She is currently doing a postdoc at Princeton, and her dissertation was about artisan networks and Persian artisan networks in India. So if anyone's interested in sort of the spread of Persian art in India, or in the British Raj, I would recommend her work. She's also written a little bit about the Pashtus in history and Indian history. So she's written a great article about that. And finally, I know that I would not know anything about Afghanistan if it weren't for my teacher and graduate advisor, Dr. Nazif Shahrani, who wrote his dissertation years ago on the Kyrgyz people of the Wakhan corridor. And he is just a fantastic scholar of anthropology in Afghanistan. And I just highly recommend that you check out all of these scholars' work, because I think all of it contributes to the big picture that is knowing this shared history. And of course, I think with how many musicians we referenced tonight, we should probably start like a YouTube playlist or something, because there's so much beautiful music that is coming out of this discussion. We kept being like, and this artist, and this artist. And so maybe one day we'll put together something.
Yeah, of course.
But for now, I think maybe it's time to call it a night for both of us. Dr. Saghar, I'm so thankful to you for holding the space with us tonight, for sharing.
You're welcome.
Thank you enough.
Yeah, I'm grateful and thankful to you that you make this opportunity for me and provide this opportunity for me. And also I'm thankful to your audience, which they join us. And I hope my presentation was helpful, useful for them, because, for me was a little difficult to explain all these in English, because I don't have that much practice, and so, but I hope it will be useful for all of your audience and for you also. Yeah.
It was perfect. Next time we'll get you in the daytime so you can sing for us. So.
Of course, definitely. Because, as you said, right now it's 2:00 in Germany and everybody is sleeping. So
you can sing Malkons. Sing Malkons. It's a late night rag, so you can sing.
Yeah, but next time, inshallah. Why not? Next time, yeah.
Tashakkur ziyad ba shuma, manana, and I really hope we'll be seeing more of your work in the future. For those of you who continue to tune in, next week we will be having a continuation of Dr. Saghar's lecture in the form of a workshop and discussion called Rhythms of Afghanistan. So we're very excited to have two wonderful Afghan tabla players join us to help us learn more about the rhythms that you introduced, in addition to a few more fun folk rhythms like Katahani and Atan. And so it'll be more of this. And thank you once again, Saghar. Thank you, everyone.
You're welcome.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us. And we will see you all next week and for all the events later on in the month. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you so
Khuda
much.
Hafiz. You're welcome. Khuda Hafiz.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.